8% to keep my pension benefits intact after 18 years of making sure every bolt, every weld, every single piece that rolled off our line met Toyota's specifications. But there I was, standing in front of Sophia Daniels' desk, watching her flip through spreadsheets like my career was just another line item to optimize. The nameplate on her desk reads CEO in bold letters. Same desk her grandfather William used to run this place from when it actually meant something to build things right. Now it's all about metrics and margins and quarterly reports that look good to investors who've never set foot on a factory floor. I'm Howard Sullivan, by the way. 47 years old, senior production engineer at Daniels Manufacturing, or I was anyway. Been there since I was 29, fresh out of trade school with big ideas about American manufacturing and quality craftsmanship. Seems like a different lifetime now. Sophia looked up from her laptop, that practice smile every MBA learns in business school. The kind that says I'm listening while her eyes are already calculating how to get you out of her office as quickly as possible. Howard, let me be direct with you. The pension system is outdated. Healthcare premiums are eating into our efficiency margins. We need to streamline our workforce for the modern market. I shifted the folder in my hands. Inside were 18 years of documentation, process improvements that saved the company $180,000 annually, quality control systems that kept our defect rate at 0.3% when industry standard was 2.5%, safety protocols that meant we hadn't had a lost time accident in 4 years running. My quality systems prevent millions in warranty claims, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Last year alone, my process caught the bearing tolerance issue that would have cost us the Ford contract. She waved her hand dismissively, like she was shooing away a fly. Those are just standard operating procedures now. Howard, anyone can follow a checklist. What we need is innovation, not obsession with perfectionism that slows down production. Anyone can follow a checklist. 18 years of engineering experience reduced to following a checklist. I felt something twist in my chest. Not quite anger yet, but something deeper. The kind of feeling you get when you realize someone you've been loyal to has never actually seen you as anything more than an expense line. The Toyota engineers specifically requested me for their quarterly reviews. I tried one more time. They trust our process because they trust the person behind it. Jim Nakamura told me last month that our quality metrics are the best in their supplier network. And that's exactly the problem, Sophia said, leaning back in her grandfather's chair. The irony wasn't lost on me. William Daniels had built this company with his hands and a belief that reputation was everything. Now his granddaughter was sitting in that same chair, talking about replacing reputation with efficiency algorithms. We're too dependent on individual knowledge instead of scalable systems. Maybe it's time to consider a transition. Howard, you're 47. Early retirement packages are quite generous these days. Golf courses are nice this time of year. Early retirement at 47. With Linda's diabetes medication costing $400 a month and our son starting community college in the fall. Early retirement wasn't generosity. It was a polite way of saying, we don't need you anymore, and we don't care what that does to your family. I thought about Linda at home, probably checking our insurance coverage again, trying to figure out how we were going to manage if my benefits disappeared. I thought about our kids, both working part-time jobs to help with school expenses because we couldn't afford to give them the kind of support other parents could. And I thought about William Daniels, who'd hired me himself back in 2005. He'd walked me through the shop floor personally, showing me machines that had been running for 30 years because they were built right the first time. Precision manufacturing is as much art as science, he'd told me. Anyone can read specifications. It takes experience to know when something's wrong before the numbers say it is. That old man had understood something his granddaughter never would. Manufacturing isn't just about efficiency. It's about understanding how metal behaves under stress, how tolerances shift with temperature, how tiny variations can cascade into major failures if you don't catch them early. I understand, I said quietly, though I didn't understand anything except that 18 years of loyalty meant nothing to the third generation of a family business that had forgotten what made it successful in the first place. I walked out of that office feeling like I'd just been diagnosed with something terminal. The same hallway I'd walked down thousands of times suddenly felt foreign. The sounds of the shop floor, the rhythm of machines I knew better than my own heartbeat, all of it seemed distant now. Back at my workstation, I sat down and stared at the computer screen showing our current production metrics. Everything green, everything optimal. Everything running exactly the way I designed it to run over nearly 2 decades of continuous improvement. But apparently, That wasn't enough anymore. That night, I sat in my garage workshop, surrounded by the classic Mustang I'd been restoring for 3 years. Every part had to fit exactly right or the whole system would fail. Kind of like a manufacturing line. Kind of like a life built on the assumption that hard work and loyalty would be rewarded. I pulled out my personal notebooks, not company property. These were mine, filled during lunch breaks and weekends with ideas that had revolutionized our production line. Process modifications that increased efficiency by 23%. Quality control algorithms that caught defects before they became costly recalls. All documented, dated, proven. Here's what Sophia didn't know about intellectual property law. When you develop innovations on your own time, using your own resources, they belong to you, not the company that implements them. I'd been generous, sharing my improvements freely because I believed we were all working toward the same goal. But generosity has limits. The bearing tolerance system that saved them the Ford contract, I developed that in this garage, using my own equipment, trying to solve a vibration issue in my Mustang's transmission. The pattern recognition software that cut our defect rate to 1/3 of industry standard. Weekend project born from my frustration with false positives in our old system. Page after page of innovations that Daniels Manufacturing had implemented without formal acquisition. Not because they were trying to steal anything, but because nobody thought to ask whether a senior engineer's weekend projects might actually belong to that engineer. I opened my laptop and pulled up LinkedIn. Pete Morrison from Precision Dynamics Corp. Had been sending me messages for 2 years. We'd met at a manufacturing conference where I'd presented on statistical quality control. He'd been impressed, kept saying how much he valued experience over energy, wisdom over enthusiasm. His last message was still in my inbox. Howard, our door's always open for someone with your expertise. We believe gray hair means experience, not obsolescence. At the time, I'd been flattered but dismissive. I was loyal to Daniels Manufacturing. I believed in the company William Daniels had built. I thought Sophia, despite her MBA buzzwords, understood my value to the organization. How naive that seemed now. My phone buzzed. Text from Linda, how did it go today? Kids want to know about college funding. I stared at that message for a long time. Linda had been cutting back her hours at the medical office to manage her diabetes better. Our health insurance premiums had gone up 15% this year. Our son needed $2,804 for community college tuition, and our daughter was looking at trade school for dental hygiene that would cost $18,000 over 2 years. We weren't poor, but we weren't secure either. We were one medical emergency away from serious trouble. One job loss away from choosing between Linda's medication and our kids' education. I typed back, need to make some calls. We'll explain tonight. Then I scrolled to Pete Morrison's number and pressed call. Pete Morrison speaking. Pete, this is Howard Sullivan from Daniels Manufacturing. Remember that conversation we had about valuing experience? I think it's time we had a deeper discussion. There was a pause, then genuine excitement in his voice. Howard, I was beginning to think you'd never call. I've been following your work for years through industry publications. Are you finally ready to explore opportunities where experience is valued over efficiency metrics? I'm ready to listen. Excellent. How about dinner tomorrow night? I know a place in Akron where we can talk without interruption. The next evening, I met Pete at Romano's, a family-owned Italian place that had been serving the manufacturing community for 40 years. The kind of restaurant where handshake deals were still honored and reputations mattered more than quarterly reports. Pete was 53, gray-haired but sharp-eyed, wearing a simple polo shirt and khakis. No power suit, no corporate uniform. He looked like someone who'd learned business by doing it, not by studying it. I've been watching Daniels Manufacturing's quality metrics for years, Pete said over coffee. Your signature is all over their best innovations. That bearing tolerance breakthrough, the defect prediction algorithms, the safety protocols that kept them OSHA compliant through 3 different regulatory updates. My engineering team has tried to reverse engineer your approaches for months. Pattern recognition. I said simply, 18 years of watching how materials behave, understanding the subtle signs that indicate problems before they show up in the data. It's not something you learn from textbooks. Pete nodded enthusiastically, exactly. Which is why I'm prepared to offer you $95,000 base salary plus profit sharing to head our quality division. Full healthcare coverage, pension protection, and most importantly, proper credit for your innovations. $95,000 was $23,000 more than my current salary at Daniels. Enough to cover Linda's medication without touching our savings, enough to help both kids with their education without going into debt. Enough to stop lying awake at night calculating whether we could afford to fix the furnace if it broke down. But more than money, Pete was offering something Sophia never would: respect. Recognition that experience and wisdom had value in a world obsessed with disruption and efficiency. "There's something else," I said, pulling out my notebooks. "These process improvements were developed on my own time, using my own resources. Daniels Manufacturing implements them, but they never formally acquired the intellectual property rights." Pete's eyes widened as he flipped through pages of documented innovations, each entry carefully dated and detailed. "This is comprehensive. How much of their competitive advantage comes from your personal work?" "About 70%, I said quietly. "The quality control systems that keep them ahead of competitors. The efficiency improvements that save them hundreds of thousands annually. The safety protocols that protect them from liability. All mine." Pete closed the notebook carefully. "That's quite an oversight on their legal department's part." "Sophia doesn't value senior staff," I said, echoing the young CEO's dismissive attitude, including legal. "She's too focused on hiring fresh talent to worry about protecting existing assets." We spent another hour discussing technical details, team structures, and project timelines. Pete understood manufacturing complexity in a way that Sophia never could. He asked intelligent questions about scalability, quality trade-offs, and implementation challenges. For the first time in years, I felt like I was talking to someone who respected both my experience and my potential. Someone who understood that innovation comes from understanding, not just from energy and enthusiasm. By the time we finished dinner, we'd outlined a transition plan that would bring my personal innovations to precision dynamics while staying within legal boundaries. Everything documented, everything transparent, everything that Daniels Manufacturing should have done years ago if they'd valued long-term relationships over short-term cost savings. 2 weeks later, I placed my resignation letter on Sophia's desk. The irony wasn't lost on me. Printed on company letterhead, submitted through official channels, following every protocol she claimed to value. Professional to the end, even as I prepared to dismantle everything she thought she owned. She barely looked up from her MacBook. Her attention split between emails and a video conference she'd muted, the multitasking that passed for leadership in her generation. 2 weeks' notice, she scanned the letter quickly. "Where are you going?" I'd considered lying, crafting some story about consulting or early retirement, but truth had more impact. I was done protecting her feelings, Precision Dynamics, Corp. That got her attention. Her head snapped up from the screen, eyes narrowing with the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her since that morning's humiliation. "Our biggest competitor? That's unfortunate timing. We're in final negotiations with General Motors for their new electric vehicle components contract." "I know," I said simply. "I designed the quality protocols that won us the preliminary approval." Sophia's expression shifted from surprise to something resembling fear. For the first time, I saw her calculating what my departure might actually cost the company. The spreadsheets in her head were suddenly showing red numbers. "We should discuss retention options immediately," she said, her voice taking on an urgency that hadn't been there 2 weeks ago. "Perhaps that pension protection you mentioned, maybe even a promotion to quality director level with equity participation." The offer was everything I'd wanted that morning when I'd walked into her office, asking for basic respect, more than I'd dared to hope for. If she'd shown this flexibility before launching her efficiency initiatives, none of this would have happened. But some bridges can't be rebuilt with late recognition and panic-driven counteroffers. Precision Dynamics offered me $95,000 plus profit sharing, I said. But more importantly, they value experience over efficiency metrics. They understand that quality systems are built by people, not algorithms. She forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow now. Nothing like the confident dismissal from her corner office. "They're overpaying by at least $20,000. You'll see how much they really value you when quarterly pressure hits and they need to cut costs." I smiled, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Confidence in my worth. We'll see who's disappointed. My last 2 weeks at Daniels Manufacturing were surreal. Suddenly, people who'd barely acknowledged me for years wanted to take me to lunch, pick my brain about projects, understand systems they'd ignored while I was implementing them. Middle management scrambled to document processes they'd never bothered to learn. Josh Turner, the 28-year-old industrial engineer Sophia had assigned to replace me, followed me around like a nervous intern. frantically taking notes as I tried to explain 18 years of accumulated knowledge. The bearing tolerance system, Josh said, staring at his laptop screen full of data. The algorithm flags potential issues 72 hours before they manifest. How does it know? It doesn't know anything. I told him, running my hand along a machined surface. Metal talks to you if you listen. This roughness here, that's your early warning that the cutting tool needs adjustment. The algorithm just quantifies what experienced hands can feel. Josh nodded frantically, but I could see the panic in his eyes. He was trying to learn through documentation what I'd learned through decades of touching, listening, watching, like trying to teach someone to play piano by email. I also made careful copies of every email where I'd shared innovations with the company, creating a paper trail of Daniels Manufacturing's failure to properly acquire intellectual property they'd freely used for years. Call it insurance for the conversation I knew was coming. Carol Wilson from customer service stopped by my workstation on my second to last day. She'd been with the company for 14 years. One of those people who knew every client personally and remembered their kids' names. "Howard, I wanted to thank you," she said quietly. "That quality improvement you implemented in 2019, the one that caught those defective gaskets before they shipped to Toyota, that saved my job. Customer service would have been slammed with warranty claims for months." I'd forgotten about that. Just another Tuesday afternoon problem-solving session that had prevented a $1 million recall. But Carol remembered because it had protected her from the fallout. "Just doing my job," I said, but she shook her head. "No, that was you going above and beyond. Everyone knows the difference." She paused, lowering her voice. "We also know why you're really leaving." Sophia's efficiency initiatives aren't just affecting senior staff. She's planning to outsource customer service to a call center in Phoenix. Cheaper labor, no benefits, no institutional knowledge. The picture was becoming clearer. This wasn't just about my pension or early retirement suggestions. Sophia was systematically dismantling everything her grandfather had built, replacing people with processes, experience with algorithms, relationships with metrics. On my last day, I walked through the shop floor one final time. The machines hummed with the rhythm I'd helped perfect over 18 years. Quality control stations I'd designed were still catching defects. Safety protocols I'd written were still protecting workers. Efficiency improvements I'd implemented were still saving the company money. But none of that mattered to the woman in the corner office who saw only cost centers and profit margins. I stopped at Station 7, where Maria Gonzalez had been running precision cuts for 12 years. She looked up from her work and pulled off her safety glasses. "Heard you're heading to Precision Dynamics," she said. "Good for you. This place hasn't been the same since old William died. You thinking about making any changes?" I asked casually. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "My brother-in-law works there. Says they're hiring experienced operators. Paying three more per hour than we make here, plus better benefits." I nodded thoughtfully. Experience matters more over there. They understand that skilled hands can't be replaced by cheaper alternatives. By Monday morning, I was sitting in my new corner office at Precision Dynamics, explaining to a team of 8 experienced engineers how we were going to revolutionize automotive quality control. Real engineers with real experience. The oldest was 52, the youngest was 38. People who understood that wisdom and energy weren't mutually exclusive. Pete had given me complete authority over quality systems and process improvement. My first project was implementing the bearing tolerance algorithms that had made Daniels Manufacturing's reputation. The same innovations Sophia had dismissed as perfectionist obsession were now the foundation of our competitive advantage. 6 weeks later, the first implementation of my quality systems went live at Precision Dynamics. The same algorithms Sophia had dismissed as outdated perfectionism were now detecting defects 48 hours before they became problems. Our defect rate dropped to 0.1%. Production efficiency increased 28%. False positives virtually disappeared. Our sales team had data proving we could outperform Daniels Manufacturing's metrics by significant margins. The bearing tolerance system that had saved them millions was now saving our clients even more, with my name properly credited on every patent filing. For the first time in 18 years, my innovations belonged to me both legally and professionally. The morning General Motors announced they were dropping Daniels Manufacturing and awarding the electric vehicle contract to Precision Dynamics. My phone started ringing. First call was from Automotive Manufacturing Weekly wanting to interview the engineer behind our quality breakthrough. Second call was from Toyota's procurement team asking about capacity for expanded production. Third call was from Ford's quality assurance director. interested in our defect prediction capabilities. Fourth call was from Sophia. I let it go to voicemail. She called 6 more times over 2 days before leaving a message I saved for posterity. Howard, this is Sophia Daniels. We need to discuss consulting opportunities immediately. Daniels Manufacturing is prepared to offer substantial compensation for your expertise. Please call back as soon as possible. We made a mistake. The admission felt hollow, too little, too late, motivated by panic rather than recognition. I didn't return the call. 2 days later, Sophia was waiting by my truck in the Precision Dynamics parking lot. She looked different, tired, stressed. The polished confidence from that morning when she'd suggested early retirement was completely gone. This is inappropriate, I said, keeping my distance while fishing for my keys. You've destroyed 70 years of family legacy, she said, desperation clear in her voice. 35 people are going to lose their jobs because of the contracts you took. I didn't take anything that belonged to Daniels Manufacturing, I replied calmly. I took my intellectual property that your company used without proper acquisition. Your legal team should have done their homework before implementing innovations they didn't own. Sophia stepped closer, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Name your price. Whatever Precision Dynamics is paying, we'll double it, triple it, we'll make you a partner, give you equity, whatever you want. I thought about those 18 years sitting at my workstation while she collected bonuses for my innovations. About the morning she'd called my life's work perfectionist obsession, about Linda's medication costs and our kids' education dreams that her efficiency initiatives had threatened. You once told me anyone could follow a checklist, I said quietly. Maybe you should have followed your own advice about valuing the people who create them. The following quarter, Daniels Manufacturing stock fell 42%. They laid off 35 employees in one wave, targeting senior positions to cut costs. The trade publications described it as a catastrophic loss of institutional knowledge and mysterious deterioration of their award-winning quality systems. Industry analysts wrote case studies about the dangers of undervaluing experienced talent in competitive markets. Harvard Business Review published an article titled The Hidden Cost of Efficiency, When Process Optimization Destroys Institutional Wisdom. Sophia resigned under pressure from the family board after their stock hit a 3-year low. Her replacement was a 56-year-old former Ford production manager who immediately began trying to rebuild relationships with experienced engineers. Too late. The damage to Daniels Manufacturing's reputation in the engineering community was irreversible. Then came the inevitable lawsuit. Daniels Manufacturing sued me for theft of trade secrets, corporate espionage, and breach of fiduciary duty. Their case collapsed spectacularly when my documentation proved conclusively that I had developed the core systems as personal projects. The judge not only dismissed their claims but awarded me legal fees, noting in his decision that Daniels Manufacturing failed to secure proper ownership of innovations they implemented, then attempted to use litigation to retroactively claim rights they never legally acquired. But victory felt more complex than I'd expected. 3 months after the lawsuit ended, Carol Wilson visited my office. She'd found work at a smaller manufacturer, but it meant a longer commute and lower pay. 35 families lost their livelihoods, Howard, she said, sitting across from my desk. People with mortgages, kids in college, medical bills. Was your revenge worth destroying their lives? The question hit harder than any lawsuit. I'd focused so intently on Sophia's arrogance that I'd underestimated the human cost of my strategic decisions. You're absolutely right to be angry, I said. That's why Precision Dynamics has hired 24 former Daniels Manufacturing employees in the last 4 months, including everyone from your old customer service team who wanted to join us. Carol's expression softened slightly, and the others, the ones who can't relocate, who are too specialized, who are close to retirement. That conversation led to the creation of the Master Craftsman Initiative, Precision Dynamics' formal program targeting displaced manufacturing professionals over 45. We partnered with 3 retraining organizations to offer skills updates and created consulting opportunities for near-retirement specialists who wanted flexible arrangements. The program became a model for American manufacturing. Other companies began questioning their own youth-obsessed hiring practices. Within a year, applications to our open positions increased 400% with experienced professionals specifically seeking out employers that valued expertise over energy. 8 months after leaving Daniels Manufacturing, I received the Ohio Manufacturing Excellence Award for contributions to quality control innovation. Standing at that podium, Looking out at an audience of gray-haired engineers and young technicians working together, I thought about Sophia's comment about early retirement. She'd been wrong about everything. We weren't expensive legacy employees clinging to outdated approaches. We were battle-tested professionals who understood the difference between moving fast and building systems that actually work long-term. Last month, Daniels Manufacturing declared bankruptcy. The company William Daniels built from nothing was sold to a private equity firm that immediately closed the Ohio facility and moved production overseas. 70 years of American manufacturing excellence, gone because the third generation confused efficiency with innovation. My quality systems are still running at Precision Dynamics. My name is on the patents. Our defect rates remain the lowest in the automotive supply industry. And somewhere in Ohio, a young CEO learned too late that experience isn't just about age. It's about wisdom earned through decades of solving real problems. If you're reading this and you're over 45, dealing with managers who think your experience is expensive rather than valuable, remember something. Your knowledge isn't just worth defending. It's worth fighting for. Document your work. Understand your legal rights. Never let anyone convince you that your best years are behind you, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to become invisible. Age isn't a weakness in manufacturing. It's wisdom waiting to be unleashed. And when experience finally gets angry enough to demand respect, entire industries change.